strong focus on youth unemployment, which is very high on the agenda of all three entities. I think that these conclusions will make a good starting point for European Council next week, and I also think that it will make sort of this first phase of the European semester come to a good end, enabling each member country to make his or her national convergence programs. So in that respect and in these two issues, I think that this Council meeting has been very constructive, very fruitful. First, of course, the political agreement on the two-pack, and second, the conclusions for the European Council coming up next week. Olli?
Thank you, Margaret. I do agree with Minister Vestager that we took important decisions today in the ECOFIN meeting, paving the way for the European Council, for instance, as regards macroeconomic and fiscal and macroeconomic policy, and as regards economic governance concerning the general approaches agreed today. Yet another step forward to reinforce economic governance in the European Union. I'm also glad to note that the ministers in the ECOFIN welcomed this morning's agreement on the second programme for Greece, including the way it will be funded and the way private sector is contributing to it. It is an essential decision to substantially reduce the debt burden of Greece, and it will help to reform the economy and administration of Greece to help the country to return to growth and creating jobs. And thus it is an essential decision for the Greek people and for financial stability in Europe, as Greece has been the epicenter of the crisis. Resolving this Greek problem in a credible manner is a necessary condition for overcoming the crisis and returning to recovery. In fact, if you look at the comprehensive crisis response of the European Union, decisive steps have been taken in all fronts, which is of course essential as we are now experiencing a mild recession which can be short-lived on the condition that our policy response is decisive and determined. The economic governance of the European Union is being completely overhauled with the entry into force of the six-pack and the subsequent agreement on the new fiscal compact. The financial sector is undergoing a serious restructuring, and the risk of a credit crunch in the real economy has receded, not least thanks to the very important actions by the European Central Bank in terms of provision of liquidity to European banks. And that has also helped in a sense that the stress in sovereign bond markets has eased. It has not disappeared by no means, but it has substantially eased thanks to the actions of the ECB, as well as intensified fiscal consolidation in countries like Italy or Spain that have been under close market scrutiny over the last couple of months. We are also promoting policies for sustainable growth and employment under the European semester. In fact, long time delayed structural reforms are now moving forward, with Spain and Italy setting an example. And the programs for Ireland and Portugal are on track. Finally, our euro area financial firewalls are being strengthened. We had a good discussion last night and also today in this regard, and I expect decisions from the leaders of the European Union in the summit next month, the 1st and 2nd of March, to strengthen the effective lending capacity of the European financial firewalls, the permanent ESM and the temporary EFSF. That's very important to show that we have the credible instruments to ensure financial stability in Europe, and also very important in order to encourage our international partners in G20 and in the IMF to move in order to increase the resources of the International Monetary Fund, which form, of course, in the first place, a global financial firewall, but also at the same time contribute significantly to the European financial firewall. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I now open the floor for questions. We'll take one question at a time. Please present yourself when asking questions.
Yes, I'm Marisa Storani from ANSA, Italian news agency. My question is about growth, because 12 member states, included Italy, Holland and others, sent a letter to the European Council asking for a more support, more stimulus for the growth. Among these 12, there is not French, there is not Germany. That is pretty strange. So how you can consider this contribution of 12 without the two biggest European countries? That means that not everybody agree about the fact that we need more support on the growth part. Thank you.
Well, I don't think that the question of growth should be a question of procedure. Because just as today, it was obvious that all member countries are very preoccupied with the question of how to promote growth, not only in a medium and long-term perspective, but also in a short-term perspective. And I think that sort of the three different cornerstones of the strategy towards consolidation and stability in Europe, they're all growth-oriented. That be, for instance, to make sure that there is our financial stability, to make sure that we do not have a credit crunch for all small and medium-sized enterprises, which are the job creators of Europe. It's very important to have an open credit line, which were one of the things that were on the table today. Second, to make sure that the single market is moved forward. That is not a direct concern of the ECOFIN, but I think it's equally important. And then, of course, to make sure that fiscal compact, the two-pack, the European semester in total, is moving forward in a way where you consolidate, but you do consolidate as much as necessary, but no more than that. I think these three different issues together will form a strategy for growth, as well as some of the very concrete measures proposed by the Commission, such as Youth on the Move, and on the annual growth survey, the 5 different issues also concerning modernization of public sector, to make sure that businesses are not hampered in growth by red tape and unnecessary regulation.
Nothing to add. I think Germany and France are certainly, on the basis of the discussions in the last couple of days and weeks, they are firmly in favor of sustainable growth. And as Margareta said, this is broadly shared among this is fully shared among the ministers, and we are working along those lines that Minister Vestager outlined. Talking about growth, or say lack of growth, we will publish our interim forecast on Thursday, and you are cordially invited to the other side of the road on Thursday the 23rd, 2 days at 11 a.m. for the press conference.
Thank you, Anne Call from the Irish Examiner. Just wondering, do you think it would be useful for Ireland now to seek a return of the profits from its bonds when the time comes? Thank you.
Please repeat your question.
Do you think that Ireland should seek a return of the profits from the bonds the ECB is holding when they mature?
The mic.
Could you try again? There is some interference in the microphone.
Is that any better? Okay. Just wondering, should Ireland hope or seek for the return of profits from the bonds on Irish debt that the ECB is holding in a similar fashion to Greece? Do you think it's necessary to ensure the stability or the sustainability of its debt?
No, it is not. Greece is a specific and unique case that has been underlined several times by the leaders of the European Union, by the Eurogroup and ECOFIN, by the Commission. And such kind of private sector involvement that has taken place in the case of Greece has or will not be repeated anywhere else. Besides, the Irish program is on track, and Ireland is, despite its difficulties and the painful adjustment, Ireland is on the way of recovery and return of economic growth and better economic prospects.
David Gow from The Guardian. A question for Mr. Rehn, or a couple of questions. We heard earlier about the scale of the, as regards to Greece, the scale of the wage cuts which have already taken place, and those which are forecast to take place over the next 3 years, and beyond that. So there'll be a kind of permanent wage cut economy. Can you tell us how that is compatible with what you and the rest of the ministers have been talking about, i.e., restoring growth and certainly restoring growth and jobs? How does that come about? Because philosophically I find it rather difficult to cope with. And the other thing is, can you tell us when you're thinking of making your proposals for this enhanced and permanent presence of the Troika in Athens?
As regards your reference to the adjustment of unit labor costs in Greece, over the past decade, Greece and the Greek economic model unfortunately turned out not to be sustainable. The country lived beyond its means in a systematic manner in the past decade, and this was illustrated by the rapid rise of unit labor costs, both in the public sector and in the private sector, so that the public sector was the wage leader in Greece. Now there has been some restoration of cost competitiveness in Greece, but there is still further need to adjust the labor costs so that the Greek economy can be made competitive in terms of its cost competitiveness, and especially concerning the low wage sectors or low wage jobs, and therefore the reduction of unit labor costs is one part of the package which the Greek government has presented and agreed with the EU IMF Troika. As regards the enhanced and permanent presence, we have already reinforced our presence in Athens so that the Commission's task force on Greece has several experts in different ministries, including the Ministry of Finance. We are currently in the process of increasing the number of staff. I cannot say the exact number because we are working on it, and we are also aiming at having member state experts, more member state experts, because on many areas it's not the Commission that has the expertise, it's the member states